Hey y'all, so today we're going to look at what you might have missed in 2020 if you were in a math class in spring semester. Especially if you were in Algebra 1, that's what we're going to look at in this video. And if you are like should we say most schools in the US, you really only got half the semester. You got the first 9 weeks, and then you got some sort of attempt at a second 9 weeks of algebra. And I know some schools did it way better than others. Some schools were just ready to just make that transition to online, and some were not. So if you're here, then you're probably in one of those that was not so ready and just caught off guard. I mean, I think everybody was to some extent of, whoa, this is happening, and all of a sudden we have to make a complete shift. So it was a big deal. And so if you were in Algebra 1 and you got half of the semester, I think most schools are probably giving you the credit that if you got if you were passing the first 9 weeks and you got the semester credit. But if you're here, it's because you know that you missed a lot, and going into geometry or Algebra 2 is likely to be a challenge. And so you're right, not a challenge that's too hard for you or too much, but yeah, I mean, that's something that you need to think about. I will say that at the school where I was teaching, before we even knew that school would not resume in the spring, and before we even had very many details, before school was out definitely for the year, our math department already had a plan in place for how we're going to catch these kids up, how these kids that were in second semester Algebra 1, geometry, Algebra 2, pre-cal, all of that, how are they going to be at a comparable level to the kids who got the whole semester because they took it fall semester last year, and so we already had a plan in place, so that going forward, we had those kids taken care of, and so first thing I would say is, try to talk to your previous teacher or your future teacher that you're going to have for the next upcoming class, and find out what their plan is. Say, hey, I was one of those that only got like a 9 weeks of this, how am I going to be able to catch up? And if they have something that's specific to your school and the exact curriculum that y'all were following, then that is absolutely the way to go, because they know what you already have and what you didn't. Because I mean, yes, algebra is lots of building blocks and it's very sequential to a point, but there are some things that are going to be out of order. There's a unit on data, and that could have come in. You might have gotten that in the first 9 weeks. A lot of teachers save it until the very end of the semester, so you may or may not have gotten that unit in. Just there's lots of little things that that you may or may not have gotten, and so your school is going to know that the best. But what if you moved, or what if you're just not confident that your school is going to be one of those that's ready for you, or whatever, or there's all kinds of reasons why you might be concerned. So so let me kind of go through several things that I feel pretty confident that if you only got the first half of Algebra 1, you probably haven't seen this. You probably got to some point in quadratics, I hope. I hope that you learned factoring in the first 9 weeks. But factoring quadratics is huge. That's really important to success in Algebra 2. You're going to need to be able to factor to do rational functions, and rational functions is a big part of Algebra 2. So the factoring and solving by factoring, that's something to look for. The whole reason I'm doing this is because, if you missed stuff, but you go to YouTube or Google or wherever and you start typing in how to, you're trying to find stuff if you just type in what did I miss, you're not going to really find what you need, and if you don't know what you missed, you don't know what to search for. I've tried typing in the second half of Algebra 1 and I just didn't get really helpful information. So I hope that this will help you so that you know what to search for. So solving by factoring, solving quadratics by factoring. Those are two things to look for, and I have a video on that, so I'd love for you to check my video out. I'll be adding more videos regularly, so hit subscribe. I never know which side to point to. Hit subscribe because it helps me, but it also will help you to know, oh, there's something new from Algebra Student. Let me see if this is something that I can use. All right, so along with solving quadratics by factoring, you'll see quadratic formula. Discriminant is something you need to know. Not discriminate, it's discriminant. It ends with A-N-T. That's involved taking square roots, solving by taking square roots, and then solving, completing the square. You sometimes see in Algebra 1, not always. I wouldn't worry about that one. If you, yeah, just that one to me is not a big deal if you miss that. All right, that's just my opinion. All right, so solving quadratics, anything related to that you want to be strong in going forward to certainly to Algebra 2. All right, graphing quadratics is important, and you probably didn't get to that either. And so graphing quadratics would be from vertex form, from slope, from standard form, or from intercept form. That's what I was trying to say, intercept form. So being able to graph from any of those forms is good. You want to be able to do that. And you want to be able to rewrite them. So if you're given a quadratic equation in standard form, you want to learn how to write it in vertex form, or the other way around. If you're given a quadratic equation in vertex form, you want to be able to write it in standard form. I don't think I just said that twice. I think I said the opposite. That's what I meant to say. You want to look at intervals of rate of change. You want to know about increasing and decreasing, characteristics of quadratic graphs. That's probably something you could look at, or properties of quadratic graphs. And then comparing functions. So you may or may not have seen exponential functions, where you'll see geometric sequences, but being able to compare a linear function, which you should have gotten in the first 9 weeks of Algebra 1 for sure, being able to compare a linear function to a quadratic function and to an exponential function, and just kind of see there are some similarities, but there are a lot of differences, but there are some things when they transform that are the same and things that are different. So you might search for comparing linear, quadratic, and exponential functions, comparing functions, Algebra 1, that might come up. And you don't want to just compare the functions, you want to compare the graphs, you want to be able to compare the rates of change, compare the transformations. So that'll help you there. Just real quick with exponential functions, you're going to look at geometric sequences. That's something to look at. And you're going to be looking at exponential growth and exponential decay. That's something you can look at. And again, being able to characteristics of exponential functions and being able to graph those as well. So I thought I turned the video off with my little button that I'm holding here. All right, and then data. Data, like I said, is something that might be at the very beginning of something that you already saw at the beginning of your semester, or it might have been something your teacher was saving for the very end. That's what we were, that's what we typically did where I was teaching last. But that would include things like histograms, something called the MAD, mean absolute deviation, which I have a video out or coming soon on that. Two-way tables, dot plots, scatter plots, correlation, trend lines, all those kinds of things. So, you know, a lot of people consider that a lot of common sense kinds of stuff, but there are some details there that, how important is it going forward? For success in Algebra 2, maybe not so much. Maybe. For just a grasp of graphs in general and life and statistics, then I think it's really important. I think it's great to understand causation and correlation and things like that, just to be really good at analyzing you know, the news that you see, the graphs that you see on the screen. You know, well, what are they comparing, and does that really say what they're saying, or are they making it look the way they want it to look? You know, it's just good at being a critical thinker, I think. So not going to be huge for Algebra 2, maybe, probably, specifically, but you know, I think useful for life. So anyway, all right, so the biggest things that if it was my child, this is what I would be saying. You need to know how to factor, solve by factoring, quadratics. You need to be able to know how to use quadratic formula and solve by taking square roots. You need to be able to graph quadratics, and you need to be able to compare a linear equation, a quadratic equation, and an exponential equation. And, you know, just know what's the similarities, what are the differences, you know, what happens in each one that makes them different, and then just exponentials in general, just understanding what an exponential graph looks like and what it means and what's growth and decay, that kind of thing. All right, I hope that's helpful. Please give me a thumbs up to tell me if it was helpful, and in comments let me know what other questions you have or what videos specifically you'd like to see. That helps me out so much. I would love to know. And if you go to algebrastudent.com, you'll see that I have other ways of helping you make sense of algebra. Bye.